On the morning of January 26, 1966, 3 children left home for what should have been an ordinary trip to the beach. It was Australia Day, a public holiday. Families filled the streets, children played outdoors, and Glenelg Beach near Adelaide was crowded with people enjoying the warm summer weather. Among them were 9-year-old Jane Beaumont, her 7-year-old sister Arnna, and their 4-year-old brother Grant. Hundreds of people were at the beach that day. Several saw the children laughing, swimming, and playing in the sun. Some even spoke to them. Then, sometime around midday, the 3 children disappeared. No one reported hearing screams. No signs of a struggle were ever found. Their bodies have never been recovered. No one has ever been charged. Nearly 60 years later, the disappearance of Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont remains one of Australia's greatest unsolved mysteries. The Beaumont family lived in Somerton Park, a quiet suburb of Adelaide in South Australia. Jim Beaumont worked as a traveling salesman, while his wife, Nancy, cared for their 3 children. Jane, the eldest, was known as a responsible and sensible 9-year-old. Friends and family often described her as mature beyond her years. Arnna was 7, cheerful and energetic, while Grant, only 4 years old, was the youngest and adored by his older sisters. On that Australia Day, Jim was away on a work trip. Nancy decided to let the children spend the morning at nearby Glenelg Beach before returning home for lunch. Today, allowing 3 young children to travel alone might seem unthinkable. But in Australia during the 1960s, it was completely normal. Children regularly caught buses on their own, played outside for hours, and returned home without parents worrying. Jane had made the trip before, and Nancy had every reason to believe this day would be no different. Before they left, Nancy gave the children enough money for their bus fares and reminded them to be home by midday. It would be the last time she ever saw them. At around 10 a.m., the 3 children boarded a bus bound for Glenelg Beach. Passengers later confirmed that the journey was uneventful. The children appeared happy and excited, just like countless others heading to the beach that morning. When police later began reconstructing their movements, they discovered that several independent witnesses had seen the Beaumont children after they arrived. At first, nothing about those sightings seemed unusual. The children were seen swimming, playing in the sand, and enjoying themselves like any other family on a summer holiday. But as investigators interviewed more witnesses, one detail kept appearing. Again and again, people described seeing the children with the same unknown man. Although each witness noticed different details, their descriptions were remarkably consistent. They spoke of a tall, lean man believed to be between 30 and 40 years old, with fair or blonde hair and an athletic build. One witness, Roma Brute, told police she watched the man interacting with the children for quite some time. The group appeared relaxed. The children laughed and played with him in the water, and nothing about their behavior suggested they were frightened or trying to get away. To anyone watching, he seemed less like a stranger and more like someone the children already knew. Another witness later reported seeing Jane enter a nearby bakery and buy meat pies and pasties for herself and her siblings. It was a small detail, but it immediately caught investigators' attention. Nancy had only given the children enough money to pay for their bus ride home. The food Jane purchased cost more than she should have been carrying. Somehow, she had obtained extra money. Police believed it was likely that the unknown man had given it to her. That raised an even more troubling question. Jane was known as a cautious and responsible child. Those who knew her found it difficult to believe she would casually accept money from someone she had just met. Whether the children had met the man for the first time that day, or whether he had somehow earned their trust within a matter of hours, remains one of the biggest unanswered questions in the entire investigation. As the morning came to an end, the children were seen leaving the busiest part of Glenelg Beach. Instead of walking toward the bus stop that would take them home, several witnesses saw them heading north along the shoreline with the unknown man. It was the last confirmed sighting of Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont. After that, the trail simply ended. Back at home, Nancy Beaumont expected to hear the children walk through the front door around midday. When they failed to return, She assumed they had simply stayed at the beach a little longer than planned. It was a public holiday, and Glenelg was busy. There seemed to be no reason to panic. But as the afternoon wore on, her concern began to grow. She contacted friends and relatives, hoping someone had seen the children. No one had. By evening, there was no longer any doubt that something was terribly wrong. Jim Beaumont was contacted while away on business and rushed home immediately. That same evening, South Australia police launched what would become one of the largest missing person investigations the state had ever seen. Officers searched Glenelg Beach, nearby streets, parks, sand dunes, vacant properties, drains, and waterways. Volunteers joined the effort, determined to find even the smallest clue. But despite the enormous search, investigators found nothing. No discarded clothing, no personal belongings, no sign that the children had ever left the beach area. As detectives interviewed witnesses over the following days, they carefully reconstructed the children's final known movements. One fact became increasingly important. Several independent witnesses had described the same unidentified man spending a considerable amount of time with the Beaumont children. Based on those accounts, police released a composite sketch of the man. Newspapers across Australia published the image, and his face quickly became one of the most recognizable in the country. Thousands of people contacted investigators after seeing the sketch. Every lead was examined, every possible identification investigated. Yet none of them led to the man police were looking for. As weeks turned into months, the investigation only grew more complex. Rumors spread across Australia. People reported possible sightings of the children from different states. Others claimed they had information about kidnappers or secret locations. Each report offered a glimmer of hope. One by one, every lead collapsed. Among the more unusual developments was the involvement of Dutch psychic Gerard Croizet. Internationally known for claiming success in other missing person cases, Croizet was invited to assist the investigation. He claimed the children could be found near a warehouse in Glenelg. Acting on that information, authorities excavated the site in 1967. Nothing was discovered. Years later, during another visit to Australia, Croizet identified a different location that he believed held the answer. That site was also searched. Again, investigators found nothing. Although his involvement attracted enormous media attention, it brought the investigation no closer to solving the mystery. Over the decades, police examined countless suspects, but two names repeatedly attracted significant attention. The first was Arthur Stanley Brown. Brown closely matched the physical description provided by witnesses and had connections to the Adelaide area. Investigators spent years examining his background and comparing his movements to the timeline of the disappearance. Despite their suspicions, they were unable to gather enough evidence to charge him. Brown died in 1995, and his possible connection to the case has never been proven. Another man who came under scrutiny was Derek Percy. Percy had been convicted of murdering a child in Victoria and was considered one of Australia's most dangerous violent offenders. Detectives reviewed his history in detail, looking for any evidence that might connect him to the Beaumont children. Although some investigators considered him a possible suspect, no direct evidence ever linked him to the disappearance. Percy consistently denied any involvement and died in 2013. As each new suspect was investigated, the same pattern repeated itself. There were similarities, there were suspicions, but there was never enough evidence to explain what happened on that summer afternoon in 1966. Decades passed, yet the central mystery remained exactly the same. Who was the unidentified man seen with the Beaumont children? Where did the children go after leaving the beach? And why has no trace of them ever been found? While investigators continued searching for answers, the Beaumont family faced a different kind of agony. For Jim and Nancy Beaumont, life never truly returned to normal. Every new lead brought hope, only to end in disappointment. Over the years, they received thousands of letters and phone calls from people claiming to know what had happened to their children. Some believed they had seen Jane, Arnna, or Grant living under different identities. Others claimed to know where the children were buried. Many of these tips were well-intentioned. Others were cruel hoaxes that forced the family to relive their heartbreak again and again. Nancy Beaumont never stopped believing that her children might still be alive. For many years, she kept hope alive, refusing to accept that they would never return home. Jim Beaumont rarely spoke publicly about the case. In one of his few interviews, he admitted that not knowing what happened to his children was the hardest part. The uncertainty never faded, no matter how many years passed. As time went on, advances in forensic science gave investigators new hope. The Beaumont case remained officially open, allowing detectives to revisit old evidence with modern investigative techniques. In 2013, South Australia Police assigned a dedicated cold case team to review the disappearance alongside other unsolved cases. Detectives re-examined witness statements, suspect files, photographs, and physical evidence, hoping that something overlooked decades earlier might finally reveal the truth. Then, in 2018, another major development captured national attention. Police excavated a former industrial property after a tip from a former worker suggested that children's remains might have been buried there many years before. The excavation was extensive and closely followed by the media, raising hopes that the mystery might finally be solved. But after days of searching, investigators once again came away empty-handed. The disappearance remained as mysterious as ever. Today, South Australia Police continue to treat the Beaumont case as an active investigation. Detectives have repeatedly stated that identifying the unknown man seen with the children on Glenelg Beach remains one of the most important steps towards solving the case. The Beaumont disappearance changed Australia in ways few criminal cases ever have. Before January 26, 1966, it was common for children to travel alone, catch buses, spend entire afternoons outdoors, and return home without constant supervision. Parents generally believed their communities were safe. That sense of security was shattered. In the years that followed, families across Australia became far more cautious. Historians and social researchers often point to the Beaumont case as one of the tragedies that fundamentally changed how Australians viewed child safety, strangers, and public spaces. Nearly 6 decades have passed since Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont boarded a bus for a simple day at the beach. The witnesses are older. Many of the original investigators have passed away. Yet despite decades of investigation, countless leads, and remarkable advances in forensic science, the fate of Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont remains unknown. South Australia Police continue to accept new information, hoping that even after all this time, one crucial piece of evidence may finally reveal the truth. Until that day comes, the disappearance of the Beaumont children remains one of Australia's most haunting unsolved mysteries.